Peter, I was just curious, like when you land in Heathrow and you kind of come into London, I was wondering if you see things about the UK or being in Europe that are like distinctly different from the US, whether it comes to the way people do business over here, or even the fact that if it's more of a socialist government, or do you see anything different, or even London as a financial center?
Well, I mean, it seems not much different to me than being in the States. I think it's a little more charming, London is, than New York, just walking the streets here. And, you know, it's just, it's been around for a lot longer. You have, you know, hundreds of years of architecture predating a lot of things that we have in the U.S. But, you know, it makes me think really of the glory days of the British Empire when it was still ruled by the crown. And if you think about Britain back then, before they had democracy, when you had a monarchy, there was actually more capitalism here in Britain. It was a freer society. The British subjects wouldn't let the king get away with an income tax or anything as you know, tyrannical as that. So most you know, kings or monarchs treated their subjects a lot better than, you know, democratically elected governments treat their citizens today. And I think that if the UK had still been ruled by a monarch and was a, you know, a constitutional monarchy with limited powers and, you know, the rule of law and private property, and they still had that type of economy, you can imagine the wealth that would exist in the UK today. It might still be really the center of commerce and you know, and wealth in the world. Instead, you know, it's another country. You know, but it could have been a lot more, and it was a lot more before the disease of socialism infected it. And a lot of it did it through democracy, because that's what the people voted for. One of the beauties of monarchy is people aren't voting. So instead they're just living their lives, and they're creating and they're producing, and you don't have people voting for theft. You don't have people promising something for nothing, because the monarchs are there and they don't have to worry about getting elected, and you know, their children don't have to worry about getting elected either, because they just inherit the title.
I never heard it that way. I guess, yeah. And if they really screw up, then they get overthrown and killed, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, well, history shows that the public won't tolerate, right, a king or a queen that would be so oppressive. I mean, if there was a king today in America or the UK, you know, they still had the power. If they tried to oppose income taxes like the ones we have now, there'd be a revolution. Nobody would accept that type of tax system. I mean, think about the United States. You know, we had the revolution and we broke from the British. It was over taxes.
Right.
And the taxes were tiny compared to what we tolerate today in the United States. I mean, Americans are paying levels of taxation that would be unthinkable around the time of the American Revolution, either in the United States or the UK. Nobody would have tolerated that. Yet we routinely do it when we do it to ourselves, when we think, oh, it's okay because we vote for it. But, you know, I didn't vote for it. You know, there are a lot of people who wouldn't vote for these taxes, but we can't overcome the majority. And what we really have is tyranny of the majority, not just tyranny from one individual, but tyranny from the majority. And the problem is you can't really overthrow it.
How much of your commentary gets into politics and how much is pure finance? Because you obviously know history pretty well, and you know, you obviously ran for office in the past. I mean, as you get older, do you find that you're looking at things more from political spectrums as opposed to just pure financial?
How old do you think I am?
I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm older than you guys. Well, no,
yeah.
I'm 50, so I am getting older. But there's a lot of politics in when I talk about the markets, or a lot of economics involved in it, because I'm generally investing about the big picture. So I don't spend a lot of time when I'm, you know, talking, getting into the particular details of a particular company, or you know, the balance sheet of a company, or, you know, what I think is going to happen to earnings. Because lots of people talk about that. I mean, there's nothing really unique about having an outlook on a particular company. So what I think is more unique is my perspective on the global economy, and in particular on the U.S. economy. And a lot of it relates to politics, because a lot of what's wrong with our economy can only be fixed politically. The problem is it's very difficult to outvote the majority that wants something for nothing. And as the government gets people hooked on a handout, they vote for it. Even if the reason that they're poor is because of these government programs, once the government creates this sense of dependency, where people depend on the programs, then they just vote for whoever promises to continue them or expand them. They don't realize that they'd be much better off if none of these programs existed, and instead there was a lot more freedom and opportunity in the country, and then they could ultimately enjoy a much better lifestyle if we had a freer economy.
You know, I want to get into what you're thinking, where we're going to go economically, but as a financial center, London, you know, it managed to battle off any other, you know, places in Europe like Frankfurt. I mean, it seems to have survived, but are you impressed with it as a financial center? Do you think it's going to get bigger or smaller when it comes to, say, Singapore, Tokyo, New York?
Well, relative to New York, it'll get bigger, but I do think that in Asia, so Hong Kong, Shanghai, I think those centers are going to grow in influence over time as more and more wealth is created in Asia, as more savings are accumulated that need to be invested. I think the capital markets will grow in those regions. I mean, right now, a lot of that is outsourced to places like London or New York, but I think over time, they'll do more of that in-house.